Welcome to Intelligent Think, the podcast in which we explore what makes ideas great, how we can make our thinking better, and why it's so important to share your ideas with the world. Plus, we'll be talking to thought leaders and authors about their own journeys so you can mine them for gold nuggets that will help you along the way. I'm Verity Craft.
And I'm Christina Wedgwood.
And this is Intelligent Think. And today, I was really keen to chat about the idea of whether the process or the outcome of something like a book, but any, really big thought leadership project is more important. And it was prompted by a clip that you shared with us of Simon Sinek talking in, I think it was a Diary of the CEO podcast episode, which you then shared with me, and I have listened to the first 20 minutes of before I realized it was 2 hours long and haven't listened to the rest of it.
It was a whole evening of, TV consumption for us to watch it on YouTube.
But I really loved what he said. So do you want to summarize kind of what he said in the clip, and then we can chat from there?
Specifically, well, he said a lot over 2 hours, but specifically the bit that I liked was he said that he's not smarter and more articulate and more knowledgeable about something because there's a book out in the world with his name on it. He is those things because he wrote it. So he's talking there about how, we're sold the pithy quote image with the, life is about the journey, not the destination. But then a lot of the tools and technologies that we're adopting, and AI was specifically what he was talking about, they are about getting specific outcomes. And in many cases, they forego the journey and therefore the learning and the development and the evolving that happens along the way. So they take some of the richness. You get the outcome, but maybe lose some of the richness on the way.
Yeah, and I think it really spoke to us because the way that we approach books is not necessarily the fastest way you can get to a book by any means. There's lots of programs out there that are write a book in a month or 3 months, or there's a couple that are like, we'll talk to you and then give you a book in 48 hours, which most definitely has to be using AI because I don't know that anyone could write even something terrible in 48 hours. And the way that we approach it is really different. Like most of our clients take a year, around about. Some will be a little bit less, some will be a lot longer to write their books. Even when we're ghostwriting, we generally take 9 to 12 months. And I think that's because what you get from the process of thinking, developing your ideas, developing the structure, being challenged on those ideas, testing them out over time is actually way more valuable than just the output of, having a book in your hands. Obviously, everyone likes to have a book in their hands, and it's a really, powerful tool, and it's an accelerator for thought leadership. But actually, the journey of how you get there, in my mind, is often the most valuable bit. And I think it's what people really underestimate when they try and shortcut to get to a result, whether that's in a book or in any other thing that they're doing.
I think I could do with being able to describe that better too, because I often say to people, your ideas are going to evolve so much as you go through this journey. But from the outset, people don't necessarily think they need that, right? Because they're like, but what do you mean? My ideas are good and they're ready, and they're, I'm poised to do something with them now. So it's only later when they go, oh my goodness, I'm so much more confident in what I'm saying. I can articulate it so much better, but look how it's matured in the process. I don't think they can anticipate or appreciate that from the beginning, even when I'm saying that that's what's going to happen. So,
I often will say to people, like, if you're not a little bit embarrassed by what you put out in the world 3 years ago, 5 years ago, then you probably haven't learned and evolved enough. And I think that's a really important piece to remember with thought leadership, is that it's constantly evolving. And if your thinking stays the same, if your messaging stays exactly the same, if what you're putting out there stays exactly the same, you are eventually going to start boring people because they're going to be seeing the same things. But B, you as a human are not going to be evolving and making things better, so that you lose the opportunities to improve things and make things better. And so I think that, you actually need to accept that when it comes to thought leadership, and, we talk a lot about books because it's what we do, but when it comes to any kind of thought leadership, actually that process of evolution and the improving of it and the recognizing that maybe you were wrong about some stuff, or maybe you weren't wrong, but you've just learned something else and this is how it's evolved. That's so valuable, both for you as a human, because it's like this amazing personal and professional development, but also for the world, because if you just went, oh, that's a good idea, and took it as the first thing that came out, it's probably not going to be as powerful, as valuable, as useful as something that you've evolved over time and tested out and thought about and been challenged on. So I think that that's the same that can be applied whether you are writing a book or whether you're just sharing your ideas in any form, whether that's speaking or LinkedIn, Substack, whatever it is.
But I think it's why we are so attracted to books, is because we have seen the way that they force your thinking and your ideas to do that, to evolve and to expand, and anything that you're putting that many words to gets so much more robust. So it's not even necessarily, like you said, it's not necessarily that something's proven wrong, but you find where the shortfalls are or the holes are when you're teasing it out over that sort of space of time. The other thing that I think I would say, circling back to previous point, is we can tell people that their ideas are going to do that and their thinking's going to change. And even on a cognitive and intellectual level, they get that, right? I always say I have never met an idea that goes out into the world in its book in the same form that I met it.
Yeah.
Because they morph and change and deepen and improve, frankly. But I think there's a very different journey to feeling that and experiencing that. It's like all the things they tell you about when you become a parent, right? And they can tell you till they're bloomin' blue in the face, and you're like, oh, yeah, understand. But until you feel it and go through it and experience it yourself, you're like, oh,
that's what my mother was talking about.
So I think that really happens with that process that people are going to go on with their thinking and their ideas. And so when we've looked at where you could or should not use AI in, say, writing a book, we're looking at where you're going to lose some of the richness of the experience versus, there are places where it can enhance or help aid what you're doing.
We put a line in one of our recent email newsletters. I say we, Elsa wrote it. It was great. That I really appreciated, and that we got a response back from somebody saying, I love this part of it. And it was basically, I can't remember it word for word, but it was basically, when creativity and humanity is needed, do it yourself. When you need to systematically organize information, that's when you can use AI. It was something like that, written much more nicely than that. But I thought that was a really good distinction to make, is like, actually the humanity and the creativity and the thinking should be you, because that's what makes it unique. And like, we were just talking about it in a group call this morning around the fact that we actually all kind of think that we're going to see a shift back towards people not using AI for content, because we're really seeing people like react quite negatively towards how much AI content is out there. And some people are doing it really well. Some people are prompting AI really, really well, and it's not coming across. But when people are very clearly writing it themselves, or when they're posting videos that show themselves authentically, like, those are the things that people are connecting with. And so I think we're actually going to see a shift back where AI is definitely going to be used for lots and lots of things that are built into freaking every tool now.
It'll be in the background more, I hope.
Yeah, but I think it's sort of, we're probably going to reach a bit of an equilibrium where it's like, actually, no, there's things that we still want the human for. And I think thought leadership is one of those, because we still want a human's thoughts. Otherwise, we could literally just stop listening to all the thought leaders in the world and start using AI for everything.
You especially want a human's thoughts if you are trying to create an impact. Because an impact or a changed action or a new behavior, that only comes when someone's felt something. That's how you're going to achieve an impact. So I don't believe you can get that unless there's a person helping you to feel a particular way.
I don't know that I totally agree with that.
Yeah?
Like, I think that AI could do that sometimes. Like, it can make you feel something if it's well written enough. Because, like you think of, like, we ghostwrite for some people, and it's not necessarily their words on the page. It's their ideas. We are getting their stories. We're doing all of that. We're still the ones putting the words on the page. Theoretically, somebody could put those same stories and things into AI, and it could write something that's halfway decent that, could feel something. Where I think, though, particularly for books, particularly for thought leadership, the human comes into it, is that you are trying to take somebody on a different journey than they've been on before. And AI is pulling from information that already exists before. And so I think that's where that thinking element comes in, is like, well, actually, where do I need to meet them? How am I meeting them there? And I do think that in general, it's still going to feel more and be more authentic and all of those good things. But I don't know that it's necessarily that a machine can't write something with emotion in it. I think it's just that we connect more when we know that it's the person, and we can tell that it's them authentically and their ideas.
So as far as the foregoing some of the process, what do you think people are losing in that? Like, what do we want people to understand or think about when they're thinking process versus outcome?
I think there's a few things, because for some people, all they want is a book. Like, they genuinely don't care about how it's written. They don't care particularly about the journey that they go on. Like, they just want to say, hey, my name is on this book, and you want to use it as a lead magnet or as a credibility tool. I think there's a real risk, because I think a bad book is far worse for your reputation than no book. You can have something, and yes, you might think, no one's going to read this. I'm just putting it up so that I look like an author. But if someone does read it...
Are people thinking that?
I think some people do.
Oh,
I think there are definitely some people who write books because they've been told they need a book for, to look good as a speaker, to...
So they're really ticking the box.
They're really ticking the box.
Wow.
And they've been told they need one, so they just get one out there. But then, somebody reads that, and if it's not compelling, if it's not engaging, if it doesn't make them think, if it doesn't move them forward in some way, then that impacts on how you look. So I think if you're not doing it properly, there's that risk to the reputation. And yes, you can just think of a book as a glorified business card, but some people are still going to read that glorified business card. And how do you want them to actually think of you and see you and view you? And if you want them to see you as an expert, as an authority, as a thought leader, then it has to be good. So you've got to make sure that it's good. That's probably more of the outcome in some ways. But I think in terms of that process piece, what people miss out on if they just go straight to the end result, they just get a book created by AI or, thrown together really quickly from blog posts, is they miss out on the confidence that you get from having worked through your ideas yourself, and the confidence that you can stand in those ideas and say, I know these ideas will have an impact. And yes, you do get that from your day-to-day work with your clients, but you're not necessarily always able to articulate that and that confidence, that message, that idea in the same way as you are once you've been through that whole process. So I think the confidence is a really big bit. There are loads of other things, though, and I feel like you've probably got lots of them.
Oh, goodness. Talk about throwing me back on the spot. No, I think the confidence is a massive one, because you've tested and you've articulated, and you've rewritten, you've crafted the ideas in such a way, but you've also had to poke at them from all different angles too. So when you're writing a book, you are looking at, what would people that don't agree with me think about this, or what would some of the objections be, or whatever. Once you've actually dealt with all of those things, you are undoubtedly more confident and comfortable in what you're saying as well. What else?
I feel like the other part of it is it's a bit like when you go and do an MBA. Like, I don't think that most people now do an MBA because they go, I'm going to learn all of this knowledge that I couldn't get anywhere else. Like, a lot of the knowledge in an MBA is not necessarily, it's accessible in other places. So just like an MBA, when you are writing a book, the value is not necessarily in the knowledge that you're going to pick up along the way. It's in the process itself, and it's in the development that you do in the way that you think and the way that you act and the way that you feel. Like, it's actually that personal development that they miss out on if they don't go through the process of writing a book properly.
There's two things that I want to say about that. And one is it's internal and external, so that I know. I'm going to bookmark that so I can circle back around.
So you don't get totally lost in a tangent.
Deal with both of them. So internally, absolutely, personal development of the highest order, because so it's professional development, but it's personal too, because your inner critic and, imposter syndrome and self-doubt and all of those nasty voices are going to yell really loudly at you when you are putting something that you're pouring so much of yourself into out. And who are you to do this? And, why would anyone read this? And all of those things. If you go through the process and stick to the process and complete the process, you are having to face down those things time and again and say, hello, I see you, you're there, thank you, and keep going anyway. So there's a huge personal and internal confidence that comes from those things didn't derail me, and here I am still, I saw them, I heard them, and I did the thing anyway. So that's massive. But the other external piece, and I think you sparked it when you said about the MBA, is part of doing an MBA is you're actually showing and signaling to the world that you are somebody who committed to, showed up, completed, did an MBA, right? People who have written a book, they're showing the world, their peers, etc., that they are somebody who kind of picked the hard path, right? If it was really easy, anyone would do it. And yes, obviously there's the AI argument now, but there's still an impressive sort of, I don't know, not badge, but it's impressive to have written a book and put your thinking through that kind of rigor and seen it through to the end and then released something that you're proud of, especially when that's been hard, demanding, energy-taking work for sometimes a whole year alongside the other work that you do. I think there are as many people who say to me about specific content of my book. There are as many that also are like, I can't believe you wrote one. Like, you finished one, you wrote one. And I'm like, despite the fact that that's actually what I do. So for other people, that's even more remarkable, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that's why, speakers who have books tend to do better. They tend to be able to charge more and they get more gigs because it's seen as this real credibility piece.
It's got status because it is special and it takes something to do.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing that just sparked, though, for me was the other benefit of doing it properly is that you codify your expertise, your IP, in a really different way through this process. Because, like, when you start off writing a book, you might have a program. So a lot of people will come to us and they might say, I've got this program and I want to turn it into a book, basically. And so they've got the framework and blah, 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 blah. Like, they put it all in exactly the same. Fine. But actually, by having to write it into a book form and figure out how it works chronologically, figure out the journey that you're trying to take someone on, that improves that framework so significantly that then can be fed back into the business. It can be fed back into speaking and whatever other forms that you're sharing your ideas. And if you haven't done that yet, like if you don't have a framework, if you don't have a program, this often gives you that framework and gives you that way of capturing your knowledge and your specific approach, your specific kind of framework for the way that you do things, the way that you approach, in a way that can then be packaged and turned into different things. So I think from a business perspective, it's actually incredibly valuable to go through the process of developing that IP, codifying that IP, as opposed to just capturing whatever content you already had and throwing it in there and giving it an edit.
Totally. And it's interesting how many people think, well, I know how to write my book because I have a course or I have a program, and therefore my book will just follow the same structure as that. And then they get into it and they're like, oh, no, it doesn't, because that's a different mode of delivery to this. And I'm like, yeah, otherwise you could just publish the manual for your course, or publish your presenter notes. So yeah, all that uncovering or discovery is what I was going to say then, happens when you go through the process and you embrace the process.
And I think, although we obviously talk about books a lot because, again, it's what we do, the process versus outcome question, to me, is something that we should be applying in pretty much all areas of thought leadership and business at this point. It's like, is this a situation where the result is the most important thing? So I need to get to this result and I need to get there quickly, in which case then probably you are going to look for quick ways to achieve that result.
Tools
right?
and efficiencies and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Often making sales. Often you are trying to get to that, especially in a tough environment. You might be looking for a way to get to a sale quickly. What is the proven thing that's going to get you to the result in whatever way? You're probably not going to play around with lots of different things. But I think in terms of most of our long-term activities, the thought leadership, the things that are going to help us work towards our vision, what we need to remember is that the value that comes from the process is actually sometimes as valuable as the result itself. And while the result is important, you've still got to get to that result in a way that gives you what you need out of it. So I think it's like, I don't know that I have quite the right framing on it, but it's kind of that idea of like, don't give up every process in order just to save time, because I think you miss out on stuff that you didn't realize you were getting.
Absolutely. Even from things like proving that you can, proving that you'll stick with it. Think about, I think about that in terms of children, right? We could tell them the answer to that maths problem, but they get so much more from figuring out how to solve it. And in fact, they get so much more from figuring out how to solve that maths problem, even if they get the answer wrong.
Yeah.
So they've had to communicate with their classmates. They've had to look for the nuance and, the words. They've had to problem solve. They've had to think, oh, no, I can't, but I'm going to try anyway. It's all of that character building stuff that comes through the process of learning. And I think the process of practicing thought leadership, the process of writing a book, they are also processes of learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's richness there.
It's learning and teaching at the same time, right? Although sometimes I do wonder if we're just being really masochistic and making things harder for ourselves by really appreciating the process over the result.
Maybe.
Amazing. Is there anything else that you feel like has been ruminating around your head around process versus outcome?
I think there's a bit of culturally a bit of a swing to slowing down, to intentionality, to the fullness and richness of things, and not sort of hustle speeding past it all. And, we want to appreciate the stuff on the way. So I think this feels quite aligned with all of those sorts of ideas, which I was just excited to see someone celebrate the process, even when there are these really attractive and alluring, easy outcomes. Because, I guess the value alignment is there for me.
Yeah, I love that. Cool. Well, you've been listening to Intelligent Think with Verity Craft and Christina Wedgwood. Thank you so much to Lochana Media for our video production, to Jeff Ong for our theme music, and to you for listening. Let's keep doing more better thinking together. Man, that was a really bad finish, but that's okay. Hey guys, if you've stuck around this long, then my brain's not working very well. Here's to better thinking together.